Hello, Alex. How are
Hello.
you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I just heard that you are in Washington in the US right now. So it's
Yes.
morning, very early morning for you.
Not too early, but it is morning, yes.
Okay. So soon you will be in Munich with us, teaching on Munich Knits. And we are very much looking forward to it. You have some books out in German as well, translated into German. And we want to talk a little bit more to get to know you better, to know the participants know they can understand you and what they can expect from the workshops you are doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So you are a little part Estonian, I know, part American, part Canadian.
Yes.
Um, And you are famous for all these old Baltic traditional knitting methods. But for a start, everyone always wants to know, when do you really learn to knit? As a little girl or later?
I learned as a little girl. I was about 8, 9 years old when I learned to knit. So my mom decided that was the time to learn. She learned about the same time. So my mom is Estonian, and Canadian. She grew up in Canada. And my grandmother from Estonia, she taught her about that age. So my mom said it was time to learn to knit. And she took me to the store to let me pick out yarn to make a scarf. And I picked chenille yarn
Ooh,
because at 8, that seemed really exciting for an 8-year-old girl, shiny and soft. I didn't know it was going to be really hard to knit with until I started. But and I just made a striped scarf, and it was quite wonky and wavy, like every person starting. It's not straight. Um, so I learned that time, but I was the only person in my school who learned to
okay.
knit.
Mhm.
Really. So I didn't have any friends who knit. So I stopped for a while and then didn't pick it up again until I was a teenager. And there
Okay.
were a group of older girls at the school I was at, and they had a little knitting club after school that they met up and they knit. And so then I started knitting again
Okay.
when there were other people who knit. Yes. Huge.
And being taught in Canada or in America, it means that you're a thrower or you're a
I'm
continental.
continental,
Ah,
so
good.
I am very much European style. So my grandmother knit continental, my mom knit continental, I knit continental. We have slight variations for purling. So my mom does a
Hmm.
Norwegian purl, and I know how, but I don't usually do it. I do the throwing style only when I knit like Fair Isle stranded color work. I'll do two
Hmm.
hands. And then for teaching, so I've now lived in the UK for 7 years. And
Hmm.
so most of the people there throw. So when I teach, I can do both ways. But if it's just me on my own, I'm continental. It's much
Okay.
faster.
Yeah, it's faster. And I mean, our participants will know probably mostly continental, so it's good for them to that you
Yeah.
can teach them that style. Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer continental. I only do throwing if someone doesn't know how to do continental. I'll show
Yeah.
them that, but
Okay.
continental. Yeah.
All right. So you digged into all these traditional Baltic techniques in knitting. Can you explain a little bit more why and how you did that?
So I mostly use Estonian knitting techniques as I am Estonian. So my name is spelled slightly differently. It's spelled the Estonian way. My mom is Estonian, and I grew up in a bilingual household. My dad doesn't
Hmm.
speak Estonian. My parents, their common languages are English and German.
Okay.
Um, and so I was always, my family in Australia are very creative. They do lots of different arts, so interior design, jewelry, ceramics, and then we have several friends who are in textiles.
Mm-hmm.
And so we grew up surrounded by all the beautiful things. I didn't go to Australia until I was like 14 was the first time I got to go. But I did activities growing up with the Estonian community here and in Canada, in Washington and Canada. But knitting kind of, we had a lot of books. My grandmother was a really big knitter. She did a lot of Estonian lace, but other bits as well. And so we have a wide variety of books. And when I got more into knitting, it was on one trip, one of the first trips I went over. It's a family friend. She's a very famous textile artist, and she put out a book on their puppets. So it was to get people back into doing traditional glove and mitten knitting, but she made them into hand puppets, and I wanted to make one. So I started, and then I kind of fell in love with just seeing the different techniques, and they make really patterns. And it was a way for me to find kind of a love being Estonian, not living in Estonia, because it can be hard when you are usually the only Estonian person someone meets. I am that person. Where I live in England, I'm the only one. And so ask, they're like, well, what does Estonian sound like? Do you speak it? And blah, blah, blah. And so you kind of become the ambassador, and it's more of a challenge when you're very little. I had that in school. I was like the only little girl who was Estonian. But so knitting kind of gave me that love. And so I went through all the old books, and then we'd go to craft fairs, and I would talk to mostly older women who do the traditional stuff. And we have in Estonia title of master knitter. So we have a craft union, they give that out. And they're people who keep the traditional techniques going. And so I would sit with them and go, I have questions. Can I ask? How do you do this? Because a lot of it's not written down. That's been a problem. So I work with some of them now to kind of like write it. And what I do is kind of a modern version of the traditional. Because the traditional ones, I have done it, but it's on needles of about like 1.75 to 1.5 millimeter, like metal DPN needles. They're very long. It looks like wire, and it's very tight. And it's not my preferred style. So I do the same techniques, but using kind of all the variety of yarns available now and doing it on larger projects. A lot of the things are on smaller pieces. I do have, because I have all my links, they're on smaller ones, like
that's beautiful.
Yeah, so I buy from a lot of the teachers. So I always bring in my workshops the traditional ones. This is done on a 1.5 millimeter needle.
Wow.
So I bring these, and then I bring kind of what I do, which the smallest needle I write a pattern for is about a 2.25 for socks, because I feel like that's small enough. So I do kind of that, but on things that I would want to wear that doesn't feel like I'm wearing my folk costume. So it's kind of bridging the two. So they kind of came along. I also just like to do research. So to me, it's like a little bit of a treasure hunt. I now go to archives and look at things. Yeah, try and figure how to make the thing, but also make it easy. So like using things we have access to now and doing seamless construction, because that wasn't a thing in kind of previous generations. So, yeah,
that's right. Yeah, that means you bring the old techniques into a modern surrounding and into modern designs. We have chosen two topics for our workshops on Munich Knits. One is Roosimine, and the other one is Baltic Braids. And I see behind you some designs hanging as well, where you can maybe explain a little bit which is which, and what we can learn in these workshops and what the people have to bring.
Yes. So the one which is Roosimine, which is the Inlaytechnik. So this is a traditional glove
Like,
with it.
mhm,
Um, I use it, it's always on small projects traditionally, but I use it on sweaters, shawls. This is a well-known pattern. So it decorates a sleeve. So it's a very easy technique to learn.
mhm,
You're only working with one color, but we use multiple contrast colors to make a pattern by creating floats. It's almost kind of like weaving while you're knitting. So this is the little swatch that everyone will make in the workshop.
mhm,
Kind of learn how to use two colors and everything you need to know about the technique. It's very easy to do. It's all knitting in the round, just
yeah,
on a little swatch. And for it, it's done on whatever needles someone likes to knit in the round, whether it's circular needles to do magic loop or small circulars, double points, whatever,
yeah,
but in the round, kind of like if you're knitting a sock. And it's all done with DK yarn.
mhm,
You don't need a lot of the contrast color, but so 3 colors, and it's a very easy thing to knit. It's very addictive. It's probably my personal favorite technique. I use it a lot, um, because it's really nice to knit with and it's very easy to do. It looks harder than it is, but it's all just knit stitches in the round. And it's great for using special skeins of yarn or leftovers in your
mhm,
stash. So my patterns don't use a lot for the contrast colors.
mhm.
So it's a nice way of like, if you buy, like me at shows, sometimes I buy just one skein of yarn from a dyer at a festival because I don't know what to make. And I buy one and then I go, what do I do with it? And they end up becoming used in patterns like this
Mhm.
technique because it really showcases it in a really nice way. And that's very unique for kind of
Yeah,
Eastern knitting.
a little bit plastic as well, is it? Has a little texture.
Yeah, it has a bit of texture. So it looks it's supposed to mimic kind of like embroidery. So
Mhm,
it's supposed to kind of look a mix between embroidery and weaving. And it's very easy. It's kind of a mix of, in terms of knitting, intarsia and color
mhm,
work. So you're making patterns by making floats, but on the outside. Most of the time, we hide the floats if you're knitting color work. They're all on the inside.
yeah,
And here, purposely have them on the outside. But it's a really nice technique to learn. And it's one of the most popular ones I teach. The other one is Baltic braids, and it's a little bit of a taster of knitted braids. So
mhm,
um, it's called Baltic braids. We do 2 Estonian braids and 1 Latvian braid, and they're
mhm.
3 braids that are similar. There are more braids that exist in Estonian knitting, but these are kind of like just a few. And so
Okay.
I kind of refer to them as cousins. So they're similar, but very slight difference. So everyone knits, again, a little swatch like this. So you can see all the different braids. And we start with the smallest one, working to the largest. And it's all done with 2 colors, and it's just knit and purl stitches.
Mhm,
And it is it's something that's really nice to use with the stone knitting. We like embellishment, so all of our knits are very embellished, and
mhm,
braids get used kind of as like a nice stripe or divider, but it's also used on sweaters to prevent curling. So instead of using ribbing, we use a
mhm.
lot of braids, which gets used on, this is a vest of mine.
Wow.
But this has no ribbing apart from just the edging I did up here.
Yeah.
But on the bottom, it uses, this is one of my
So
favorite.
there's no band. Yeah. Okay, I understand.
And
Or a
yes,
different band, a different kind of.
yeah, a different kind of band, but it uses, this is one of my favorite braids, which is from a very tiny island in Estonia called Kihnu.
Okay.
And I use it on a lot of things, and it's just 2 rounds of knitting. Very easy to do. And they add a little bit of kind of texture, so they sit higher up on your knitting, and they make for like a nice divider between patterns. We use them on, like, you can use it on cuffs, or I've used it on just doing like a striped sweater, but they add like a nice bit of patterning to do. And this also is on DK weight yarn. So this one you only need 2 colors of, and again, it will be knit in the round. The braids are a lot easier to do in the round because you're seeing the right side the whole time. So any needle that you're comfortable knitting, I think it's for both of the workshops, it's about 40 stitches, 40 to 50 stitches on the needle.
Yeah.
So small, so you can knit kind of quickly around, so and learn the techniques. And with these braids, you get to learn how to make them pointing to the left and to the right, so you can make them go different directions as well.
Okay, makes me wonder if I want to come to this workshop.
It's a very fun.
It looks so great.
They're really great, and it's a nice little detail to add to a project. I put it like sometimes we'll combine, like this one has the braids as well to kind of segue between stitch patterns. Or if you like on that vest, if you don't want to have any ribbing, you can just use braids to curling. So it's a nice little technique of doing stripes, but in a different way.
Okay, good. And what our participants have to bring, we have all written down in our program that they have to bring some yarn and needles, etc. And if I remember right, you speak German as well.
Yes, I do. I lived in Munich for a bit, so it's nice to be coming back. So I do speak German, and I can, and the braids workshop we're doing in German. But if someone has a question like in the Roosimine class, I can always help as well in German.
Aber in Deutsch und nicht in Bayerisch.
Nicht in Bayerisch, nein.
Okay.
Nein.
Das war nur ein Test.
Erkennen, aber nicht sprechen.
Ich verstehe es nach 30 Jahren noch nicht. Also,
ja. Ja, ich habe auch Deutsch gelernt, also, aber ja, ich kenne Bayerisch, aber nicht kann sprechen.
Nicht zu sprechen, okay. Yeah, good. So let's wrap up. See you soon in Munich. Have a safe flight over.
Thank you.
And it's a month to go.
1 month to go. Very exciting.
Okay, bye.